Bullet hell shooters are a quite well-established genre. You shoot bullets and try to dodge bullets. Try to dodge a lot of bullets, and I mean a lot of bullets. And while there are a lot of games that build upon and subvert the genre, I've encountered none that bend and twist it as much as this little unassuming game that only has 6 reviews on Steam at the time of writing. And that game is Eigengrau. This initially very bleak seeming title screen is a very purposeful choice, I think. Color is a big theme in this game. The name itself even refers to the color humans make up in their mind when they see complete darkness, which it turns out isn't quite black but actually a shade of grey. This shade is called intrinsic grey or Eigengrau. We'll get back to color and what it entails in this game a bit later. So when you boot into the first level, it seems pretty standard. Player on the bottom of the screen, enemies flying in from the top. Something that is a bit different from most other shoot 'em up games is that you can fire in all cardinal directions, not just upwards. This concept is also taught right in the second wave of enemies by forcing you to change the direction of your shots to hit the enemies at the bottom of the screen. Eigengrau does this a lot, teaching you through enemy placement and little cues instead of tutorial pop-ups. According to the creator Martin Mauersics, the 4-way shooting was actually inspired by Tourplan's Hellfire, a shoot 'em up from the Mega Drive which I remember fondly from my childhood. There the player has the option to change between different firing modes. Now these are quite a bit more extensive than what Eigengrau features, but you can definitely see the inspiration there. Not just with the non-standard shooting, but also with the colors. However, Hellfire only scratches the surface of what Eigengrau masters. Change. The shifting of paradigms. The most consistent thing in Eigengrau is that it is constantly on the move, constantly changing. Immediately after discovering that you can shoot in multiple directions, you're also introduced to enemies with shields which block all your projectiles. That might not be special, but what is that you won't see these shields for quite a while after this short wave. Oftentimes, mechanics are introduced in one wave and then immediately replaced by something else in the next. The game constantly keeps you on your toes, the status quo keeps changing. Let's skip over the tutorial for a moment and put our attention on the first real stage of the game. This is actually where the shields get reintroduced to the player. However, this time, they only shield parts of the enemies. We are forced to move around them, and as soon as we switch our brains into working with this new paradigm, they change to rotating shields instead. Then to angled shields, to a shield wall, to a small puzzle in which we have to destroy enemies in a certain order to unlock the next one. Do you start to see what I'm talking about here? Then, as soon as we clear the waves of these shielded enemies, we are greeted by this. Enemies bound on a path along a purple line. These lines inhibit our movement and only disappear if we destroy the enemies on them. A paradigm shift again. With all line followers dispatched, we are assaulted by enemies that can jump and are only vulnerable when they hit the ground. However, each time they land, they also launch their own attack. Paradigm shift. Instead of fighting small jumping enemies, we're fighting a big one now. Whenever that enemy hits the ground, it launches the player into the air instead. We have to use this launch to fly over the screen-wide bullet walls. A paradigm shift once again. I think you get the point. And don't worry about me spoiling the whole game here. All the things you've seen so far are before the first proper boss fight. Speaking of boss fights, in Eigengrau they are the quintessential experience of the game. They take all the different mechanics introduced throughout the stage and merge them into one epic fight. You will recognize the progress you have made throughout the level and how you learned each different interaction, yet still be challenged in a new way. This is a brilliant little way of setting a strong boundary for these mechanics and clearing the player's mind of them, with the farce of destroying a new boss before going into the next level. And that is because the next level will feature a whole new array of fun and interesting spins on the genre. I think this game uses the novelty bias inherent to humans quite cleverly to drive engagement. This subconscious feeling that we prefer something new over something we already know. Many games, especially open world games, fall into the pit of having us repeat very similar actions and tasks over and over again with only very slight visual changes. What Eigengrau does instead is completely change not only how we play the game, but also how our brains have to process it. For example, having the player being launched from an enemy impact invalidates almost any strategy we might have employed prior to the encounter. Our mind is forced out of this state of stagnation into something new. To further this constant assault on different ways to engage us, you might have already noticed these tiny little stars appearing on the sides of the screen. Every level in Eigengrau has additional optional challenges to complete. These range from destroying enemies in a certain order, actively flying into really flashy attacks, or even sparing an enemy's life. Every single level has these, except for bosses. What you get instead during boss fights are these small colored objects that only appear for a few seconds before they are gone again. each fight features 8 different colors, and you'll have to destroy all of them to unlock a boss shard. And quite what these shards do, I'll let you figure out on your own when you play the game. But once again, color is a driving force here. Another neat little detail in this game is that when you damage an enemy, it drains the color out of them, slowly turning them the titular grey. This is especially noticeable during long boss fights. The first time you defeat each boss unlocks a new setting which lets you change the game experience further. These include a mirror mode as well as completely changing the game's direction. Just look at how different the vertical and horizontal game modes feel. This is again a paradigm shift. As said before, this stays the only constant in the game. Every stage, every boss, every challenge brings something new. And I promise you, till the very end of the game, it will keep surprising you. And on a more philosophical note, maybe this whole changing and shifting and keeping moving is actually the point of the game. Perhaps by turning all these colorful and moving parts grey and innate, we are playing some sort of entropy that's befalling the world. And perhaps the constant changes are there to stave us off. Or perhaps we are part of fighting entropy because we keep engaging in these different changes. Or, you know, maybe it's nothing profound at all and it's just simply a very fun little video game. Hello, it's EndCardMe, and if you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and if you're curious about this game, please check it out on Steam. The link is in the description. I really hope you enjoyed your time, and if you did, perhaps you want to change paradigm as well. And instead of me gushing over an indie game, you want to hear me be angry at a AAA game instead.